And that was
I believe in a thing called...
Oh.
Okay.
I believe in a thing called Baines.
I waited too long.
Hello and welcome to Quackcast 296. I am Ozone Ocean and with me is Pitface. Hello, Pitface.
Hey, baby.
Ooh, we've got Baines. Hello, Baines.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Mr. Baines. Nice to see you again. It's been a long time. And we have the marvellous Tance Serene. Hello, Tance.
Hello.
Hello. So, we're going to be talking about Baines' idea of backstories. This is Quackcast 296. Backstory, hidden backstory, the kind of story setup that you don't tell the audience. You have it in your head, but it just informs the rest of your story. You don't actually have it out in a great big page of dogmatic text that forces the reader to be bored to shit. So that was Baines' brainchild. But first, before we get into that, I have to introduce the featured comic, which was Grow Up. Grow Up. So, grow up! Here's Ozone Ocean with Grow Up.
Grow up.
Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Grow Up. Marie Ingram is experiencing her high school years, the highs and lows in relationships, boys, crushes, dating, love and lust. All the things that go through a developing mind and body, surging with hormones in these formative years. This is a cleverly told realistic drama story using a clever blend of private diary entries, illustrated scenes with minimal dialogue. A lot of the story is told by glances and body language alone. The art is all shades of grey, all digital, simplified realism. The story is slow to unfold, but the drama connects with you emotionally. It's nice artwork. It's, stylized realism. Simplified. It looks good, and the colours are minimal, so there's no distracting. It looks rather stylish the way it's done. And yeah, the story is told very much through the imagery that you see on the page, not just the writing. The writing is, well, obviously it's all written, but not just the text of the writing, so it's quite minimal in that respect. So anyway, I hope you enjoy Grow Up. It's a comic by Akanat, and it's rated T. And it's, quite a good little comic. I enjoyed it, and I hope you will too. It's up to the third entry of the journal, so to speak. So that's the conceit. It's sort of done through artificial entries in a journal that you read, and then you sort of see everything played out in the comic page. So anyway, I hope you enjoy Grow Up. Written and illustrated by Akan or Akanat. Read it. And that was Ozone Ocean with Grow Up. And next up, we have the featured music by Mr. Gum Wallace. And this week, Mr. Gum Wallace has given us a track for Pickup Guys, I think, or Pickup Dudes. I'm not sure. It's by the fantastic Mr. Dario Di Nato, which is just one hell of a name, isn't it? I mean, my God, I would pay to have a name that good. Dario. Sounds like Dario Argento.
Is he your son?
He is my son.
You named him well.
So, The Last Pickup Artist, that's what it's called, The Last Pickup Artist. And the music, I would describe this as a nice, dry rock feel. Heavy guitar, this music is for cruising in a muscle car. Or a Pontiac GT or something like that, you know. You gotta have that kind of environment to enjoy it properly. So take it away, Mr. Gum Wallace. And that was the last pickup artist by Mr. Gunn Wallace. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Gunn Wallace. And Dario Donato.
Yay.
Yay.
Hooray.
Hooray. All right, Baines. This idea of yours, before the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's sort of the idea of, I like the way you put it in the introduction there, where you sort of have a history worked out for your characters, for the world, but sort of a past where specific things happened, and it's like fairly well worked out, but it's not really expressed in the main story, but it's hinted at. I mean, I was thinking of Star Wars, of sort of what the history, before the history existed. And this is, I'm sure there's many like better examples or as good of examples, but this is so the clarity of this one is really good, where you have in the original movie, you have like the history of Luke's father and the Force and the Jedi Knights and the Great War and great friendships and like amazing adventures and horrible tragedies and all that kind of stuff, all kind of expressed through Ben Kenobi, Alec Guinness. And it's sort of so much like the reality of it, like so much of it plays out on his face, him just as an actor. And he probably had no idea what the actual history was other than what was in the script, I'm guessing. So it's pretty amazing. Like once you know the history, it's like pretty disappointing really, but still like you watch that first movie and like the story that plays out on that actor's face and like how he says what he says is pretty like, it's like amazing. Like, I could see everyone wanting to see that story before we actually did see that story. But anyway, enough about that. So yeah, it's sort of about the history of your world in your story or in your comics or whatever.
Exactly.
I guess in sort of a specific way, in a way. It's not really like 1,000,000 years ago, the world was... It's not exactly that, but it's like sort of more... just like there was a world the day before page one, and 10 years before page one of your story, what was going on,
Well, the thing is with stories, what happens before always influences what happens after. So things don't just happen from a vacuum. People all have histories. Yeah, like you say, what happened before the present day. But all these certain things can have happened to influence the story that's happening now. And it's good if the author knows about that. So then they can include like hints and bits and like Breaking Bad. I think you gave an example of that, didn't you, Baines?
Breaking Bad. So when we meet the character, amazing show, and spoiler alert for Breaking Bad, everybody, if you haven't watched it. The highest recommendation. But anyway, so we start and we have this guy. He's a chemistry teacher who's sort of, working below his skill level. He's kind of like a genius level guy and level scientist, chemist, but he's sort of working as a high school teacher. He's bored. He has a family and everything, and they're there, and he loves them and all that, and they him, but he's depressed. He's got a pretty unsatisfying life. And then the story goes forward from there. But what is hinted at and not really revealed clearly is how he went from this genius kind of on the rise chemist or whatever, scientist or researcher or whatever he was. We do see some flashbacks with him like very kind of positive and just sort of the whole world in front of him, and he's like excited and he's looking at that great success kind of thing. What exactly happened between then and the depressed guy who, even before he gets a cancer diagnosis, he's already depressed. We don't really see what exactly happened. From his point of view, we get a few things, but he has sort of a self-serving point of view, like real people do. And so we don't really know. So you let your imagination go. And I really like that they didn't answer all questions. I thought that was great.
It adds a lot of richness to a story, doesn't it? When the reader, I find, can work out far more interesting, rich and fascinating plot and story from hints and stuff like that than the writer can create. So
that's well said. That's kind of, I think now that you say it, that's what I was trying to get at, I think, yeah.
So as a writer, the important thing is for you to know enough about your history in order to be able to drop hints and add a bit more texture to your story and, reality to interactions, but not let everybody know so they can have the fun of doing that themselves, speculating. And I mean, say Steven Universe, which I've just gotten into, watching the first few episodes of that, it doesn't tell you why everything is the way it is. It drops you right into the middle of things, and you have to really work out what happened to his mum, Rose Quartz, and why is he in this situation? Where did the gems come from? And the things slowly kind of make sense, at least the way I've been watching it anyway. Maybe someone else has had some richer version. And say Adventure Time as well, which is a great cartoon. You don't get informed about how all the world started. You have these like weird kind of hints and bits of information, and
they kind of like drop you in the middle of it as it is, and like everything is already more or less established. You're dropped right in the middle of like the status quo. Like you were talking about Steven Universe. I like that show a lot, and I remember like first watching those first few episodes and being like, dude, like they explained nothing to me. Like I might know these characters' names. I don't know anything else, but who is this kid running around with them? Do people know who these people are? Do they have like a secret superhero identity? Which I really like that they didn't go with that kind of cliche thing, because that's just so fucking old now.
Yeah.
No offense to anyone who uses that. I'm speaking generally, of course. There's ways to use it, make it work, but just for the sake of, anyway, that's not the topic of this cast. I'm just saying, like, you don't know what you're getting into when you get in, everything's established already.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't, in that particular cartoon, they definitely eschew a lot of cliches and tropes and things like that, and go around it, so they do things their own way, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, they don't start out with establishing history and a backstory. You have to work that out yourself from the way it goes, which I love. And especially in Adventure Time, they do that. That is the king of doing it. You have all these different, like, alternate histories of how people got to be the way they were, like the Ice King and stuff like that, and it's just so cool and fun.
Yeah, I'll have to check these out. I've never seen either of those.
If you like weird animations, you'll enjoy it. They're very gentle and fun, and they're cool,
positive, and for the most part, like.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, dropping people into the middle. In Pinky TA, I don't let people in on too much of the backstory. I mean, I did at one stage try and do an intro section, which was trying to get my own thoughts in order, and because I was getting really popular there, and I felt I had to do that, but that wasn't part of the story, so I deliberately never really introduced people saying, oh, this is the Crimean Empire and this is this version of the alternate world. I sort of just tried to sort of hint and let people discover the world through the actions and through what was happening rather than explain the whole thing, and I thought that would be more interesting. Maybe it's not, but that was always the way I found stories to be interesting. Just telling them through the story rather than separately.
Oh, for sure. That's almost like rule number 1 or rule number 2 or 3, even of writing stories, right? It's one of the top, the top don'ts is to sort of front load everything with all this exposition and explanation and history.
Yeah, because you make people stop caring before you even start.
Yeah.
They don't care. They don't give a shit about your half orc lady with horns who happens to be green. Like, they don't, man. Like, unless you give them a reason to, and you can't tell them the reason to care either. You have to just throwing breadcrumbs to duck. You throw them, you let the ducks eat them if they want. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
That would be an info bomb anyway. So, which is like everyone has it as a big no-no anyway. Like starting by throwing all the background story or background info at your audience, especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
But even later on in the story, they might still get disengaged.
Yep.
Like the biggest example I can think of is from the book Les Miserables, which right in the middle of the big action where you are worrying what is going to happen to the main characters because the revolution is starting to erupt here and there, and you have the love story going on and blah, 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 the whole thing. He stops the story to give you a chapter on the sewage system of Paris. It is just the sewage system of Paris. How it is made, when it was made, how intricate it is. It is very important, of course, spoilers for Les Miserables, because Jean Valjean has to wade through the sewage system to save Marius and everything. But nobody cares about all the research that had to go into that for the author to be able to write it. Like, nobody wants a lecture
Tread like it.
on sewage system.
Yeah.
No.
So,
Well put. Nobody wants a lecture.
On
I didn't come in here for a
sewage
lecture.
systems, Ever. That's something some authors will do. That they will collect so much information and they'll be bursting. They'll be creaming themselves in order to tell the audience, look what I researched. I found this out. I researched all this. Listen. You have to hear me. Jules Verne used to love to do that.
Like, oh man, and one of the things comic-wise when happens, you see a lot. And once again, anybody who does this, like, I don't mean to offend you, but maybe a rough bit of reality here. I can't read comics when they start off with just a wall of explanatory text, even if it's written well. That's my. I shouldn't say even if it's written well. That's for me personally. Like, I can't get into it enough to even start reading it now, because as soon as I see that wall of text, I'm just like, all right, done. Like,
I would agree with that. Even if the story is great, like even if it's really good, even if it's written well, that it's usually a mistake to do that. It's so hard to get into that.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Don't tell us yourself.
I usually just keep the page and go ahead into the actual comic book. And if I realize that I have to go back to read the text, then I stop. So, yeah.
Actually,
so many post-apocalyptic movies from the 80s started that way too. It's just like, because they were trying to take off the Star Wars thing, and that was like the one-off. Well, before it became a cliche, and even now, like if you watch Star Wars, you're not going to read that opening bit every time. You'll read it maybe the first or second time, and then like, all right, like I get it.
Well, the thing people didn't realize about the Star Wars opening crawl was that isn't a backstory. All that is like a retro callback to 1930s movie reels, and what it does is drop you into the middle of the story. It doesn't tell you the past. It just tells you what actually happened 5 minutes ago to result in what is happening now. This tiny bit of action. So it's like dropping you right in the action without having like a setup. And it doesn't tell you about, like, it doesn't say they do say long ago, far away or whatever. But it doesn't sort of
but that's how fairy tales
hey?
as well.
What's
that's
that,
how
Sam?
fairy tales are also.
It's a fairy tale,
And
but
the
it doesn't set up any
Yeah.
more than that. It just says there was information stolen and, you know,
Rebellion, Empire,
Yeah.
Death Star,
currently the rebellion's doing this. Currently this is
those
happening.
big elements.
So that's
And
all
you
I
don't,
say.
I mean, to watch that movie, you don't even need it, right? You could
Yeah.
watch that movie and
Yeah.
understand everything without
You
that.
do, and
it could even serve like it feels a little bit like a news flash,
that's what it
like
was
the
meant to
ones
be.
you
Yeah,
get on the
Yeah.
because
1
that
minute news.
style of 1930s news, like adventure, real things, came out of
Yeah.
the style.
In our
of
last adventure,
newsreels.
Flash Gordon was racing across the blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. So the idea was there was another 3 episodes or whatever that you just missed out on, and this is this episode, and now go. That's a quick recap.
Yeah.
We're in.
Pretty cool. Cool idea.
Whereas-
but then to
Last time on Dragon Ball Z.
That's it. Yeah. Whereas the later things misunderstood that, and they thought, oh, we have to have a big text scroll. Star Wars did it. They didn't realize that no, it wasn't a backstory.
right.
Unless you're going to do the same kind of quick intro, you fucked it up. You misunderstood like a moron.
Which people are copying it and they don't get it, kind of thing. Previously on Happy Days.
Exactly.
really previously on Happy Day, 100 years ago.
When Fonzie's grandfather was a child, he hated leather jackets. I don't know.
Yes, Fonzie's great-great-grandfather and his leather jerkin.
When the construction crew was building the building that would become Arnold's restaurant.
Forsooth! Hey!
His father had just escaped from Starlog 13 and commuted back home in secret on a Russian sub posing as a Russian. Because I guess that's what you would do.
That's what you do. You can't pose as a sub.
Okay.
You might as well. Yeah.
Pose as a torpedo, maybe.
Beep, beep. Or what kind of sound do subs make? Whoosh. I don't know. Wah, wah,
Don't they
wah,
make
wah,
that
wah, wah.
dull sound of the radar? Boom, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Boom,
That's right.
boom. Burritos
That
ready!
boot, they go boop, 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 boop. That's what's
So how about the histories in your comics, Chans?
Oh, before we do that, I've just remembered something. There was this great fantasy novel by Raymond E. Feist, and it's called Magician, but it's based on this role-playing world that him and a bunch of friends came up with in the 70s called Midkemia or something. So, it would be incredibly boring if he talked about this role-playing world and Midkemia. It would just pull the tits off you. But he doesn't do that. In the novel Magician, it starts out with a boy on a beach seeing something weird and seeing a shipwreck come in, and you never get any backstory about the world. You don't know anything about it. You just get introduced to the whole world through the eyes of a boy on a stormy beach watching a shipwreck. And it all
there
begins
you
from
go.
there, just from a child's perspective. And that introduces the world, and he goes on from there, and it's a really good, engaging book. A lot of people will read this and go, wow, I love this. Never even realizing it was built on, this nerdy guy's role-playing world in the 1970s. You'd never know. And that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have this hugely built world that is contributed to by, many people, and they've all built it up together and run all these scenarios, but you don't need to mention any of that. It's like you do books about the real world, maybe a detective novel. You don't introduce it saying, oh, this is happening in the 1980s when the stock market crashed, and 10 years before, this grandmother had invested in money in the stock market and made $1 million, and then the son went to Stanford and he became a stockbroker and blah, 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 blah. You just do the story. You don't say, and this boy started out as a dentist and, blah, blah, blah. You don't do that in stories set in the real world. So why do you do it in your comic or anywhere else?
Yeah.
I mean, there's this common understanding that we do know about the real world, but we don't. I don't know about everything that happened in America in the 1980s, and I don't need to inform a story. You know, I don't need to read all about what happened in the 1930s and the 1920s in order to understand a story that happened during the Second World War. I don't even need to know why the Second World War started in order to understand a story about the Second World War. So that's why you don't have big prequels about, or even the First World War, or whatever. You don't have,
or the 19th World War, the World War III, like all you, you know.
Those real stories, you don't have big backstories about it. Go on, Tom.
But okay, you as a reader don't need it. But as an author, you need to know, because your characters will have experienced all that. So you have to be able to know what they would have lived through, or what the current events or their world at the time, if we're talking about the historical piece, or even not. I mean, even in fantasy, you need to know the backstory and how people perceive it or what they know about it, because that's how then a part of their behavior will be affected by that.
Yes.
Whether the reader knows
a good point.
It's the author that needs to know, not the reader. That's the
not
thing.
the reader.
Exactly.
No.
It's so, Tance, your story is set during the Second World War. You do not It's set during the Second World War after Greece has already been invaded. So there's already been the fight with the Italians and all that, Bulgarians, whatever. All that's happened. And the Germans have lost, and then they've won, and then they've invaded. Tance doesn't have any of that in the story. We are already occupied by the Germans in the story. And you don't need, as a reader, you don't need to know that. But Tance does know all that, and that informs her story as we go on.
Yeah.
So Tance,
and not only that, like, for example, the reason why, like Basil, one of the big elements that he has is that he refuses to officially join, quote unquote, join the resistance. And the reason he does that is because he cannot bring himself to trust them. And the reason for his mistrust has emerged from some historical facts that I know, but nobody else does yet, because nobody has gotten him to talk about this. And I don't think it's very easy to do anyway. That's why I'm talking about it here. So one of the big things was that during the Greco-Italian War, there was a lot of, how do you pronounce that? Subterfuge.
yeah, that's right.
There was a lot of sabotaging, in a sense, from the main command, because they weren't the most patriotic bunch in the lot, especially after a few of the first line of officers died, some very mysteriously. You had miscoordination that is very suspicious anyway. So as an officer in the front, Basil experienced this. So he can't trust anyone that has a position of authority or coordination, that sort of thing. And that is why he will not actually join and put himself under anyone's command. That's the relation with the history.
Yeah.
So I know it, and of course he knows it because he experiences it. But I cannot really communicate this, at least not yet, to the audience, because he wouldn't normally talk about it in any way. And it wasn't something that was officially known until around 1947, where some documents became public that were, top secret before the regime was destroyed. I'm talking about the occupation government regime, because we did have a government during the occupation, believe it or not. So, yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, so that's stuff that you can reveal if you need to, or if you want to, or
Yeah, like you don't want to force it, like, but you have it in your back pocket in case.
It can inform,
or at least just to
specific
know
instances. Yeah, it can. Basil and Orestes, you know, that could come out in conversation or like hints, jibes, that kind of thing. It can inform their interactions.
I think though it would be more likely because Orestes he also knows about these shenanigans, let's say, because they both were in the Greco-Italian War. But Martha doesn't. No experience of the front. And she has no experience of that particular dark little secret. So she has to attribute the reasons that Basil has to other things. So she has a completely different impression of why he is being such a douchebag, basically. That's how she...
Which adds richness to the story, doesn't it? Because misunderstandings.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah, it does. It adds a lot. Knowing that kind of thing adds a lot of richness. So it's very important for the author to know way more than they ever write down.
Yeah. And it can help you keep everyone, the world consistent and the characters consistent and all that kind of stuff, even if you never reveal it to the readers.
Yeah, interactions, logical.
I expect at some point it will be revealed, but maybe it will take a lot of time before that actually comes out. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Pit, what about you? Is there any hidden? Actually, there is a lot of hidden story to Putrid Meat. You've got the whole history of the Bunkarians and the Raptarians. I think they're called
Raptorians. Yeah,
Raptorians. So
you got the gist of it. Yeah.
Decepticons, necropriests. There's all this kind of stuff that's going in your head. Not just how the story is going to progress and going to end, but you have a history. You know, you're writing the history of Blitzov, which is like a proto Putrid Meat.
Well, I haven't really talked about the history of Septica or the Necropriest, so I mean I have them there, but I'm asking you sincerely because I can't remember half the shit that I've written now. I looked at some pages of Putrid Meat that I had just last week, and I'm like, oh, when did I make these? So it could be very well that I am forgetting things, but I don't think I've ever really gone into the history of Septica or the necropriests and stuff like that. But Bunkuria, yeah, big time. And I like that because, for myself anyway, because it's not anywhere near the main story for Putrid Meat. It's just, it's a very small part of what's happened. And I don't know, I just like it so much because it is so off to the side. Don't think a lot of people really saw it coming, so I thought it was a neat chance to kind of get a little bit more into it. But Bones, for instance, you know a little bit about his history. It was kind of like you and what you did with Pinky. I did it as kind of a side tidbit, back when I used to do the Ask Bones column. What the fuck is that?
What?
Back when I just heard some weird sound.
I was folding paper. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I had to go right up to the microphone to do it.
Most of his furniture.
It sounded so angry. I'm like, what the fuck? That's him ripping up some Putrid Meat pages as we speak. He's like, God, I hate when she talks about her stupid crap.
Don't tell me about Ask Bones. He gave me a very rude answer. I don't like hearing about that. I'm just kidding.
Bones is
hit a nerve.
Trump,
but
but sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. So I talk about a little tiny bit of history and those kinds of things, but I think otherwise. Oh, and in the main story, the only thing I can think of where you find out about his history at all is like when he's escaping the facility and he thinks he has to get out of there, and he thinks back to his military school training. So he kind of uses that to kind of power himself through and not freak out and get out of there, and he falls out of a window in the end. But
we do get tidbits of Bones' history with nuns and gorillas.
Yeah, that was in an Ask Bones too, I think, wasn't it? Like when...
Yeah.
I thought so, yeah. Like when he finds out about thrash metal, and he one of the nuns at the orphanage where he was praying, and he goes up to look under her skirt, and a thrash metal cassette falls out, and he's like, "Oh, what's this?" And then he takes it and listens to it.
He's a very early bloomer, Mr. Bones, apparently.
Yeah, very much. Out of the class in that regard.
Makes you kind of wish you could follow the nun as well, like a Thrasher nun.
Yeah.
That would be also.
Yeah, I mean, nuns, necropriests. Is there a connection here somewhere?
Necro-nuns.
Necro-nun priests.
Necro-nuns.
Necro-nuns.
Link.
That
That's
is a good,
scandalous.
like one, like I remember hearing about Bones' childhood a little bit and like his history, and like I remember thinking like, man, it makes me want a whole other comic about that. To just like follow what's going on there, you know?
Oh,
It's,
actually,
was very-
A good backstory should do.
But again, it's, yeah, exactly. Like it's that line between how much do you want to show? You could show other stories, but also let the, people's imagination kind of fill in other parts of it or whatever.
yeah, like, would you show the whole childhood? Or like, for instance, I started making, and this is one of the projects I never really kept up with, because, we've all got a lot of those, I'm sure it's not just me.
No.
But one of the comics that I started was, I think I've got like 2 or 3 pages up, actually. I just haven't touched in years, but it's a backstory of how Bones met Puke. And they were kids.
Yeah.
And so like little things I do like little side jaunts like that, as long as there's like there's a reason for it, or like maybe, you find something funny in there, or it's interesting, like not just for the sake of knowing these things. Then it just becomes, just writing something like that becomes monotonous.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, with
Yeah.
Pinky TA, every time I reach the natural end of a story, chapter or whatever, then I just pick something else from her history. And I think, okay, all right, this chapter is going to be about when they developed the mechs. And so I can elucidate on the history of Pinky TA's world and technology or whatever, her history, just by going back into previous chapters of her life and telling a story in a fun way. And
Yeah.
I don't ever have to explain to the reader. I just have to pick parts of her life that I think are interesting to tell. And that will, it's like, if you've ever seen, of course everybody's seen Indiana Jones, but there was Young Indiana Jones, which was a TV series or a mini series, wasn't it? For a short time. And
it was a TV series. Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of picked out earlier episodes from his life, like escaping from a Nazi prison cell or something, and might have been First World War prison cell. I don't know. I can't remember. But
I was going to say, he's got bad luck with those Nazis, huh?
yes, even before they were Nazis, they were still Nazis.
Nazis.
But that was interesting because you could pick out episodes from his life in all these interesting periods in history and show what he was involved in back then. It was really fun and cool. And so I sort of take that as a template for how I would tell stories from, Pinky's life. I could just pick and choose and expand her world that way rather than actually telling people it, because I know about it, enough about it. I may as well, create an interesting story.
Yeah.
What about for A Typical Strange?
Well, they it's like kind of like a sitcom, so you can make up history as you go. But when I first started it, I actually worked out a fairly, like a more detailed history than I would have thought I needed. Not super elaborate, but just the history of they had a previous manager who ran the store, who had a nervous breakdown basically, and like sort of left them and now hates them because I knew I'd be bringing him back. So I wanted that history. There's one of the main characters, Penelope. I knew she knew almost everybody else, but then she left for a while because I knew there was some kind of adventure she had when she left. And I guess that's basically it. I had other ideas to like dig into sort of some of their family life and parents and stuff, but I didn't really work any of that out. I thought I could save it for later. But I did want there to be, it wasn't just everyone all together before the story started. It was kind of like Abigail was the new one, and they're kind of still finding their footing with each other and like learning to kind of somewhat get along or not. And
all right.
Yeah, so that's basically it. I sort of had a complicated history with like the former manager, and now he's gone, and then she's the new manager, and Penelope was there, and then she was gone, and then she came back. And I've brought all those elements like already in my comic. Like all that stuff has come back, and I kind of did what I wanted to do with it, kind of thing.
Yeah, so you don't have a history of saying, okay, so TK and Oscar went to school together.
Well, that I could go back even farther and see how various characters met, but I didn't decide any of that really.
Oh.
I worked out stuff ahead of time so I could, because there were certain things I knew I wanted to do. So, and then when I got around to doing them, I was glad I sort of worked it out. For not that anyone might like, I don't know if anyone would even care or notice or whatever, but I did, and it was like, yeah, like it all kind of hangs together.
Yeah, that's the important thing. See, hanging together. As long as you have that knowledge of how things, worked out, then when it goes onto the page, it can hang together, even if you don't explain how it hangs together. It just does because it makes sense in your head.
Right.
It's like algebra, you can come up with some final answer that's right without telling everybody what X and H and Y and Z actually mean. Because, I don't know if that's a good analogy.
It's an interesting analogy. I don't know about that, but yeah. I don't think that's why
you made people connect math with comics. I don't think that would be popular.
You're all plebeians. Jeez. My God. Plebeians. But yeah, it's important to, as you as a writer, know this stuff. As a reader, it's not important. It's never important for the reader to know the backstories and the bits and the ins and outs.
Unless you can tell, like Pitt said, like you said, like you have a good story you can tell, or a fun story, or something that would be cool to do. Maybe it reveals something about character, but yeah, if there's a good story to be told, I would love to do like a flashback of like, this is how blah 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 and blah 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 first met, or whatever.
But, as from your own experience, when you get involved in the fandom of something, you want to find out all the secret knowledge and the ins and outs. Maybe it's a comic book thing, maybe it's Lord of the Rings, whatever. But don't you find that when you do find out all that secret knowledge, it doesn't sort of lend you any more information on the world? It doesn't excite you anymore. You think, damn it, that's really not interesting. I wish I never looked that up. Say, if you read The Lord of the Rings and you read the Silmarillion, which is the history of everything that happened before, it's boring as crap. Or say you read Batman or whatever, and then you read up, okay, so what was, Bruce Wayne's parents, why did they get killed? And, who was the original killer? And blah, 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 and you work out, all the histories of why the Joker became... The kind of stuff is never really interesting, is it, for a reader? Even if you get nerdy and you go on and find that stuff out, and you think you really want to know it, you don't get you don't get the reward that you think you're getting. It's not as good as actually just reading the normal stories the way they're meant to be presented. I find
It depends, I guess, but like as a rule, like if you have a backstory you imagine, it's pretty hard for someone to actually write a backstory that would satisfy everybody or be as good as the story you imagine. I guess, yeah.
Of course. Yeah, it's always better to have.
But I think you can fill in background. Yeah.
I think it depends. Really, I mean, theoretically now they're getting out the prequel, Rogue One.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That supposedly is going to be much more exciting as a background. I think it's like that famous line, many people died getting the info to the Death Star or something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but that's
but maybe not.
That's not giving us like some kind of outline of some kind of broad, like fan available outline or backstory or whatever. That's turning the whole thing into like, a real story and turning the whole thing into an exciting kind of story and making it come alive rather than just, them informing us dryly of the things that
what I was referring to is that some stories, I mean, the original prequels weren't exciting.
No.
Because they weren't well made and the story was pretentious and it wasn't like it's the kind of story when you describe a downfall basically, which is how Darth Vader became Darth Vader. So unless you do it very, very carefully, it doesn't offer the catharsis that people expect, an audience expects normally out of a movie. So they didn't have that going for them, and they also didn't have anything else going for them. So you get a backstory that is a flop, a letdown. So I think it depends a lot on the delivery of certain things, especially when it comes to backstories.
Yeah.
True.
Including because if you do it like Tolkien, where you have like 1,000 appendices, where everything is listed like it's a phone book, basically, and it's not given in a narrative way. Of course, if he took the time, if he was interested, to actually create prequels and sequels, like The Hobbit, for example, or whatever, then you would get, I think, different reactions on the same storyline.
Sure.
That's a good point. Okay, so in the example of the Silmarillion, so The Hobbit is a proper prose story, Lord of the Rings, proper prose story. You got characters, you got actions and things like that. Silmarillion is told like the same way the Bible is told, or the prose eddas. This is a mythological text. This is like a Bible, basically. It tells you the creation myths of a world. And creation myths are rarely that interesting, from a reader's point of view. You have to be really invested in them in order to make them interesting. And it's the delivery, as Tant says. Maybe he did the Silmarillion as in the format of a creation myth because he thought of his world as being some kind of, like godly kind of work, and you have to have a Bible to introduce it. But, as something that readers like and enjoy, we don't get into that kind of thing. So, Tance, that's a good point. Delivery is the thing. So the prequels were told in a very dry, kind of boring, kind of political kind of, downfall story, as you say, like some kind of boring history of World War II or something, rather than an exciting, trilogy like the original trilogy was. Yeah, that's a very good point. So it's fine to give people a backstory and introduce them to, to the broader world of your world that you've created, but as long as you do it in an interesting way that a reader will enjoy, that an audience can get involved in.
Yeah, tell a good story.
Yeah, very true.
I really like. I have really liked. I haven't seen the new season yet, but I really like Bates Motel. It's the backstory of Norman Bates from Psycho.
Okay.
Something that when I heard about it, oh, pardon me. When I heard about it, I was like, oh my God, like that is a horrible idea. Why would you do that? Nobody wants that story. Nobody needs to see that story, but it's actually really good. And his mother is like a fascinating character. I don't know the movie in depth. I've seen it, half a dozen times, but
yeah.
It, to me, like the story, it doesn't go too crazy in the prequel. Like as you watch it, at least up to where I've watched, you can accept like, okay, well, this is eventually what leads to the movie Psycho. He's going to end up there, and it's sort of it tracks so far. It's a pretty elaborate story in a way. There's a lot of excuse me, oh man, a lot of subplots going on in the town and stuff like that. But for the Norman Bates character, they don't go too off the rails. They stick to what he is and like what he's turning into, and it's pretty fascinating. And there are several other characters who you care about who you don't know what becomes of them, so that's good. But even though you know what becomes of Norman Bates and his mother, like now I really want to see it happen. Like he's like, I know he's going to kill her, and he's going to, it's going to be like horrible. It's kind of like you want to see it now because it's a story well told. At least 3 seasons, I think I've watched.
Wow, that's a hell of a lot.
But it's really good. It's really good.
A prequel.
Yeah. A prequel that sort of never needed, like the whole history, what you need is told in the movie, but
yeah, well, they do it well.
To actually see it play out well is pretty cool.
Yeah, do it well.
Better Call Saul, ditto, is really good.
Oh yeah, which was the prequel to Breaking Bad, and not a prequel, a spin-off prequel.
Yeah, it's a spinquel.
A spinquel.
And but also, you could also have backstory that is crucial to the plot, concealing some kind of plot device that you have to search to find. Like you have to actually dig through and look for the backstory, and that also is a plot point, a plot device for your story. And I'm thinking of Game of Thrones, where they are facing this major problem. Aside the political machinations and, dog eat dog and blah, blah, which I personally like very much. But aside that, you also have this major problem with the ice zombies that are coming and are basically unkillable. And the reason that they are unkillable is that they have forgotten it has been lost into the history to make the weapon that does kill them. So a big part of what is coming is going to be finding first of all this thing was made, the sword that they need, and then actually having to make it, which I suspect is also going to be a source of drama. But that not as just like a nice backdrop setting for a stage for your current story, but it also is an element that can have a feeling, a sensation of doom and the past looming onto you and haunting you, and consequences.
That's what it's supposed to be, right? Yeah, that's yeah.
And I really like that as well. So
that's a good point. All right, guys, I just gotta pause for a second.
I have to go, dude. I have to get going.
Yeah.
Let's finish. Come on.
Is desperate to go, and Tantarine has to go, and Baines has just the weight of the whole
Let's
world.
Go. Let's go. You're doing the opposite of what we want you to do. Come on.
All right.
We're going in 6 seconds. Come on.
Let's poop the rest of that thing out.
All right, guys. I think we've talked it out. You've convinced me. This Quackcast has been very exciting. Thank you, Baines, for the original idea. That was excellent.
Well, thank you. We'll tune in next week where we supply the prequel to this Quackcast, how it all came to be.
Yeah, in exhausting kind of DVD behind-the-scenes quality that you'll love.
Hello?
Yes. All right.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you, Pitt. Thank you, Baines. Thank you, Tance. You all were magnificent.
You.
Thank you, Oz, and welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thailand and Cambodia will miss me forever. Those poor countries are now devoid of my presence, much to their chagrin and everlasting terror and despondency.
Well, I mean, the fact is you have some, peccadillos we know about that are 90% of the world is horrified by. So I'm just glad we were able to get you back into the country.
You Canadian bastard.
God bless you, you disgusting man. You should be free to do those horrible things you do.
You Canadian bastard. I will get you one of these days. I will pay a Cambodian to get you. And they will take my money. Alright. This has been Quackcast 296.
It was long ago and it was far away and it was so much better than it is today. There's our theme song episode.
It is Meat Baines. Baines is the meat of this Quackcast.
Baines loaf.
Baines loaf.
Bye, you bunch of cunts.
Alright.
Bye. Punk rock through and through.
Love you.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You really got to go, Pitsy?
Yeah, I do.
Nice to see you.